Ride the signal through the unknown. This is the Cryptic Current.
The graphite snapped as she finished the final line, her knuckles white against the pencil, the wall now a labyrinth of intersecting streets and dead ends. A sharp, metallic scent, like ozone after a lightning strike, filled the room, though the night outside was clear and still. In her dreams, she walks those streets, the feel of cold, damp cobblestones seeping through the soles of her shoes, the sound of a distant, rhythmic dripping echoing from unseen alleyways. But last night, something changed. The dream city felt different. A sticky, cloying humidity clung to her skin, and the air grew heavy, thick with the smell of wet earth and decay. She turned a corner she'd mapped 100 times, and the architecture was wrong. The buildings leaned at impossible angles, their bricks weeping a dark, tarry fluid. Then she heard it. Not the dripping, but a wet, tearing sound, like thick fabric being slowly ripped apart, followed by a whisper that wasn't a voice, but the sound of pages turning in an empty room. She woke, gasping, her sheets soaked not with sweat, but with the same cold, brackish water that pooled between the dream city's cobblestones. And on her bedroom wall, drawn in her own hand while she slept, was a new street on the map. One leading to a door she has never, in her waking life, seen before. A place you'd never been before. But what if you started bringing proof back? The camera slowly pulls back to reveal her slumped form. Then it reveals what covers the wall behind her. Dozens of perfectly mapped, interconnected streets, each line drawn with obsessive precision, creating a labyrinth that seemed to breathe in the dim light. A location pin stabbed into an intersection reads, "Corner of Hemlock and Vane." He watches from the red door. This is Lily. She's a sleepwalker. Tonight, the stale air in her room carries the faint, coppery scent of old pennies, a smell that doesn't belong. The towns she maps in her dreams, they're beginning to trace her back. A frantic Google Maps search reveals coordinates she never entered. Her breath hitched as she recognized the wet cobblestones and looming architecture. There, in the unfamiliar street, stood the same red door from her nightmare. The final black screen faded to reveal the title, The Dream Cartographer. Our story begins on a sun-drenched street in Austin, Texas, where the air smelled of cut grass and fresh paint. For Lily, a graphic designer, and Mark, a high school teacher, their biggest concern was simply settling into their new home. They had no way of knowing that the foundation of their reality was about to fracture. They were ordinary people, living ordinary lives, until the sleepwalking episodes began. Night after night, Lily would wander the house, her movements slow and deliberate, guided by some unseen force. Tonight, she stands in the kitchen's gloom, an empty glass clutched in her hand. The air carries the faint, metallic scent of old pipes, and the only sound is the slow drip of a faucet she never turned on. Mark found her, gently guiding her back to bed. At first, it was harmless, a trip to the fridge, standing in the hallway. Then, Mark found her at her drafting desk one night, sketching. The air smelled of graphite and something metallic, like old pennies. She'd always been artistic, but this was different. The detail was architectural, surveyor-level precision, yet the paper smelled faintly of ozone, like after a storm, and the graphite felt unnaturally cold to the touch. She had no memory of the drawings. Friends dismissed it as sleep drawing, a harmless quirk born of stress. But the air in her room carried the faint, metallic scent of graphite, and the pages felt damp to the touch. A quiet scratching, like nails on paper, would echo in the dead of night. The stack of drawings thickened, no longer just landmarks, but intricate street grids, zoning layouts, and sewer lines. Lily's exhaustion became palpable, dark circles deepening under her weary eyes as she worked through the night. Yet these sketches had evolved into something far more unsettling. Complete, coherent maps. They depicted towns with an alien geometry, places that bore no resemblance to anywhere in Texas. Lily's exhaustion settled into her bones, a deep fatigue that sleep only worsened. She confided that her dreams brought no rest. They felt like labor, like a grim obligation she had to fulfill in that other place. The air in her bedroom carried the faint scent of ozone and damp earth, as if reality itself was thinning. A low, persistent scratching echoed from the walls, though no source could be found. Mark's curiosity curdled into unease as he hunched over his laptop. With Lily's cryptic map beside him, he began searching satellite imagery of the coordinates. The air in the room grew thick and metallic, like ozone before a storm. As the image resolved, his fingers froze above the keyboard. A small, weathered map labeled Millfield lay before him. It depicted a town square, a church with a crooked spire, and a sharp riverbed. He fed the details into a digital map database, the keys clicking in the quiet room. On screen, the databases matched, a perfect, unsettling overlay. Satellite imagery reveals Millfield, a genuine Norfolk village, its church spire piercing the English skyline. A sudden, dissonant musical sting cuts through. This place was real. A quiet parish over 5,000 miles distant, yet its ordinariness only deepens the unsettling truth. Lily stood in a place she had never been before, a location unknown even to her. That night, he watched as she didn't merely draw on paper. She sleepwalked to the wall, her movements fluid and unnervingly certain, and began drawing directly onto the plaster. The scent of old plaster dust and something faintly metallic, like cold iron, hung in the still air. The maps began appearing with unsettling frequency. A fishing village in Maine materialized on Lily's wall. In her sleep, she sketched a new street, her fingers moving with dreamlike determination. Her hands suddenly froze over a blank patch of wall. A visible shudder racked her small frame. Then, in frantic, tiny letters, she scrawled a warning. "Don't go here. The ground is soft." In a Colorado mining town and a Tokyo suburb, the notes began to shift. Their tone transformed, twisting from simple messages into stark, urgent warnings. The air in both places grew thick, carrying a metallic scent like old coins and damp earth. Whispers seemed to scratch at the edges of hearing. A sound felt more than heard. Lily's maps told stories in cryptic warnings. A bridge marked unsafe. A bakery that sold something other than bread. Room for rent ads with whispered cautions not to answer. She was charting a hidden world, but the question remained. For whom? Mark pleaded with her to visit a sleep specialist, a clinic that could unravel her nocturnal torment. She refused, petrified they'd medicate the visions into oblivion. She'd begun to feel an eerie gravitational pull toward these dreamscapes, a profound, unsettling sense of belonging there. Lily traced a trembling finger across the Port Haven map, her gaze distant and haunted. A strange, magnetic pull held her, as if she were remembering a place long buried in her subconscious. Her voice was a fragile whisper as she turned to Mark, the memory of the dream clinging to her like a cold, damp shroud. "I knew where the key was," she breathed, "under the blue flower pot by the red door. I just knew." The night before the clinic, the impossible manifested. Lily lay in bed, her breath hitching as the damp, metallic scent of ozone filled the room. A faint, rhythmic scratching echoed from within the wall itself, like something tracing the newly formed contours. This was the largest map yet, a complete, terrifying geography of a place that should not exist. Lily's frame stiffened unnaturally before she lifted herself upright. This time, she bypassed the wall entirely and moved toward the front entrance. With unseeing eyes, she turned the deadbolt and opened the door. She stepped out into the damp, silent Austin night, swallowed by the shadows. In a panic, Mark followed in his slippers, the damp chill of the night seeping through the thin fabric. He trailed her for 6 blocks until they reached a forgotten neighborhood park, its playground equipment rusted and still. Under a flickering street lamp that buzzed with dying electricity, Lily began to move with unnatural precision. Her motions weren't those of a sleepwalker, but something calculated, each step measured and deliberate in the oppressive quiet. She counted 20 paces east, then turned and took 15 north before halting. Kneeling in the damp soil, she scraped her fingers through the earth, etching invisible lines. This wasn't mere sleepwalking. She was transcribing a phantom street grid from her nightmares onto reality. Every night, she wasn't just mapping in her dreams, she was rehearsing. Translating the dream's geography onto her own hometown, Mark realized with dawning horror that she wasn't just visiting these places, she was preparing to navigate one in reality. The air in the park grew thick and stale, carrying a faint metallic scent like old coins. A sudden, profound stillness fell, broken only by the distant, frantic scratching of branches against a lamppost. In that center, Lily stopped, utterly paralyzed by the comprehension of what was to come. Lily's gaze lifted, not toward the stars, but fixing on a vacant patch of night. Her voice emerged, a parched and alien croak as she spoke in her sleep. A metallic scent, like old copper, tinged the air around her. The sheets felt clammy and cool against her skin. Then, the words slithered out. "It's here, the junction, Hemlock and Vane." A profound stillness settled, broken only by the distant, rhythmic scratching of a branch against the window. Mark froze, the note from that first frantic wall map resurfacing in his mind. Corner of Hemlock and Vane. He watches from the red door. The words took on a new, chilling weight. Hemlock and Vane, the intersection from her earliest, most desperate warning. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and old iron, as if the very street remembered. Lily wasn't pointing to a spot in the park. She was stating that this spot in Austin was that corner. The realities were overlapping. Her head slowly turned toward a nearby tool shed. Its paint had faded to a spectral, rust-like hue that seemed to bleed in the moonlight. The door stood ajar, revealing nothing but an absolute, consuming blackness within. And as she fixed her gaze on that crimson door in the waking world, Mark's eyes locked onto the same threshold. Deep in the fissure of shadow between the door and its frame, something, not just darkness, stirred. A deeper shadow condensed into the shape of a man, standing perfectly still in the gloom. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and old rust, thick enough to taste. Mark's breath hitched, the sound swallowed by the oppressive quiet as his gaze fixed on the figure. The silhouette in the shed was unmistakable, a motionless sentinel watching them from the dark. It remained motionless, a silent observer in the gloom. Lily, drawn by a morbid curiosity, took a tentative step forward. Mark's scream shattered the heavy quiet, raw and desperate. The sound jolted Lily.
If the signal hooked you, subscribe and catch the next ripple.